7 clear signs you're a good-looking older woman, even if you don't realize it. Have you ever walked into a room and wondered if people still notice you? You might assume that beauty fades with time, that youth holds all the power of attraction. But what if I told you that you may be far more captivating than you realize? Society often links beauty to smooth skin and a slim figure, but true allure, the kind that turns heads effortlessly, is something deeper. It's the quiet confidence in your posture, the wisdom in your eyes, the warmth in your presence. And often, it's so natural that you don't even see it in yourself. Today, I want to reveal 7 surprising signs that you are a striking, magnetic woman, even if you've doubted it. These are the unspoken cues that make people gravitate toward you, admire you, and remember you long after you've left the room. By the time we reach the end, you may realize you've been underestimating your own beauty all along. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because if you miss even one of these 7 signs, you might never truly see yourself the way others do. Now, let's dive in. 1. People compliment your presence, not just your looks. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In a world obsessed with youth, many older women assume that they have faded into the background, no longer turning heads or capturing attention. But true beauty, the kind that lingers in a person's memory, has never been about appearance alone. It is about the presence you bring into a room, the warmth you offer, and the confidence that comes with time. I knew a woman named Evelyn, a retired nurse who spent over 4 decades caring for others. She had never thought of herself as particularly beautiful. She had always been practical, more focused on making sure others were comfortable than on how she looked. But something strange began to happen after she turned 70. She noticed that people, young and old alike, seemed to gravitate toward her. At the grocery store, strangers would strike up conversations with her. At the park, young women would stop to compliment her on her scarf or the way she carried herself. Even in casual interactions like waiting in line at the pharmacy, people seemed eager to chat with her, drawn in by her easy smile and calm demeanor. One day, a younger woman, perhaps in her early 30s, approached her in a coffee shop and said, "I hope I have your grace when I'm older." Evelyn was taken aback. Grace? She had never thought of herself that way. But as she reflected on it, she realized something. The world around her had changed. The younger generations were living in a fast-paced world filled with screens and distractions, where people rarely made deep eye contact, where kindness and patience had become rare commodities. And yet, here she was, walking through life with a kind of quiet assurance, unhurried, fully present in every moment. She wasn't chasing trends, wasn't seeking validation, and somehow, that made her stand out. It reminded her of something her grandmother once told her, decades ago. A beautiful woman catches the eye, but a woman with presence captures the heart. And perhaps, without realizing it, she had become that kind of woman. She no longer needed external affirmation to know her worth. She carried her stories, her struggles, and her wisdom like a fine silk draped over her shoulders. Effortless, undeniable. So tell me, have you ever noticed how people react to you? Do they seek your presence, linger in conversation, or light up when they see you? If so, you might be overlooking the beauty that others see in you every single day. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences. 2. Younger people admire your style and elegance. Confucius once said, "Elegance is not in the clothes we wear, but in the way we carry ourselves." In a world where fashion changes by the minute and youth is often mistaken for beauty, true style stands out not because it follows trends, but because it reflects the wisdom and confidence of the wearer. I remember my friend Lillian, a woman who never chased after the latest fads, yet always managed to turn heads. At 74, she carried herself with the kind of grace that younger women whispered about. She had an eye for timeless fashion, structured blazers, flowing scarves, and pearl earrings that once belonged to her mother. But it wasn't just the clothes that made people notice her. It was the way she wore them, the way she moved, the quiet confidence in her stride. One afternoon we were sitting in a small cafe when a young woman no older than 30 approached her. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, "but I just had to tell you how beautiful your outfit is. You always look so put together. I hope I can age as gracefully as you." Lillian smiled, touched by the compliment, but as the girl walked away she turned to me and sighed. "Isn't it funny," she said. "When I was younger, I used to think I had to follow every new trend to stay relevant. And now, these young girls want to be like me." The truth is, style is more than fabric and accessories. It's self-assurance, a quiet declaration that you know who you are and you are unapologetic about it. Lillian didn't dress to impress others, she dressed in a way that made her feel like herself, and in doing so she inspired the younger generation more than any passing fashion trend ever could. It makes me wonder, how often do we underestimate the impact we have on others? Have you ever had someone admire your style, not because it was trendy but because it was uniquely yours? If you have, you may have more influence than you realize. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear if you've ever noticed the younger generation taking inspiration from you. 3. People make genuine eye contact and listen when you speak. Socrates once said, "Speak so that I may see you." He understood that words, when spoken with presence and wisdom, reveal the very essence of a person. In a world where distractions are endless and people often talk past each other, there is something rare and striking about someone who speaks with intention, who commands attention not with volume, but with the weight of their words. I knew a man named Henry, an 82-year-old retired judge, who had spent his life listening more than he spoke. He had a way about him that made people lean in when he finally did say something. His words were never rushed, never wasted. One evening we were sitting in a small gathering when a heated conversation broke out about the younger generation, their supposed lack of respect, their obsession with technology, their unwillingness to listen. The group grumbled in agreement, but Henry remained silent, watching, listening. Then, in his steady, deliberate way, he cleared his throat and spoke. "You know," he said, his voice calm but firm, "when I was young, the older folks said the same thing about us. They said we were wild, that we had no manners, that we didn't listen. But we did. We listened to those who spoke with wisdom, with patience. The problem isn't that young people don't listen, it's that we've forgotten how to speak in a way that's worth listening to." The room fell silent. No one interrupted. Even the most outspoken in the group nodded slowly, as if realizing something for the first time. I watched as a young woman who had been on her phone moments earlier put it down and locked eyes with Henry. She leaned in slightly, waiting for him to continue. That was Henry's power. He didn't demand attention. He didn't need to. It was given to him willingly, because he spoke with presence, with depth, with the kind of earned wisdom that made people feel like his words mattered. And they did. I think about that moment often, how rare it is to be truly heard, and how, when you carry yourself with quiet confidence and speak with sincerity, people don't just listen, they absorb every word. Have you ever noticed that people lean in when you talk? That they engage deeply, not out of politeness, but because they're genuinely drawn to what you have to say? If you have, you may be underestimating the power of your own voice. Share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how people respond to you when you speak. 4. You receive compliments on your skin, hair, or posture. The ancient Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "A well-ordered mind in a well-cared-for body is a thing of beauty, no matter the age." He understood that true radiance doesn't come from youth alone. It comes from care, from confidence, from the way a person respects the body they have been given. I remember a woman named Judith who, at 76, walked with a grace that women half her age envied. She had silver hair, not dyed or hidden, but gleaming like polished silk. She never caked her face with makeup, never chased after anti-aging creams. Yet everywhere she went, people took notice. She carried herself tall, her spine straight, her movements deliberate. She had a quiet strength about her, the kind that made people step aside just a little when she walked past. One afternoon, as we sat in a cafe, a young woman came up to her and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I just wanted to say, I hope I look like you when I'm older. Your skin, your hair, the way you walk, you're just so elegant." Judith smiled, thanked her, and as the girl walked away, she turned to me with a knowing expression. "You know," she said, "I used to be afraid of getting old. Thought it meant disappearing, fading into the background. But do you see what just happened? We don't fade if we take care of ourselves. We become more visible in a different way." And she was right. Judith had never tried to look younger. She never fought against time, but she had learned to respect her body. She drank her water, took her long walks, kept up with her stretching, and slept when she needed to. She understood what most people forget, that beauty isn't about erasing the years, it's about carrying them well. Posture, skin, hair, these aren't just physical traits, they are reflections of how we treat ourselves. A woman who walks tall tells the world she is strong. A woman whose skin glows with health shows she cares for herself, and silver hair, worn with pride, is not a sign of aging. It is a crown earned through years of wisdom and experience. Have you ever been told that your presence is striking, that your skin glows, or that your hair looks beautiful just as it is? If so, take it as a sign. You are carrying yourself in a way that others admire. Let me know in the comments, have you ever received a compliment that made you see yourself differently? I'd love to hear your story. 5. People respect and acknowledge your confidence. The great Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Confidence is not something granted by youth, wealth, or beauty. It is built through experience, hardship, and the quiet knowledge of one's own worth. True confidence doesn't need to be announced. It is felt, respected, and admired. I knew a woman named Marion, a retired attorney who had spent her life fighting for what was right. She had once been a young woman in a male-dominated field, dismissed, underestimated. But she had learned early on that power was not about being the loudest voice in the room, it was about knowing you belong there. Even in her 70s, she carried that presence with her everywhere she went. One evening, we attended a dinner party filled with younger professionals, eager to prove themselves. The conversation was fast, loud, and filled with interruptions. Marion sat quietly at first, listening. Then, when a debate about leadership broke out, she simply leaned forward, folded her hands, and spoke. "Confidence," she said, her voice steady, "isn't about proving yourself. It's about knowing yourself. When you walk into a room, people decide in seconds how they'll treat you. If you stand tall, speak with clarity, and act as though you belong, then you do, and the world follows." The room went still. The people who had been speaking over each other just moments ago were now silent, hanging on her every word. I watched as the younger women at the table straightened their shoulders. The men nodded in agreement. Marion hadn't raised her voice or tried to dominate the conversation. She didn't need to. She carried herself with the quiet power of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Later, as we left, a young woman approached her. "I just wanted to say," she said hesitantly, "I hope I have your confidence when I'm older." Marion smiled. "You don't need to wait," she said. "Confidence isn't about age. It's about deciding today that you deserve to take up space." That moment stuck with me. Confidence isn't arrogance. It isn't about demanding attention. It's about walking into any room, any conversation, any moment in life, and knowing you are enough. And when you have that, people see it, they respect it, they admire it. Have you ever noticed that people listen when you speak, that they value your presence and treat you with respect? If so, you may have a quiet power you never even realized. Tell me in the comments, when was the moment you first recognized your own confidence? 6. You have a naturally warm and charismatic presence. The poet Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." There is a kind of beauty that cannot be seen in a mirror, a presence that lingers in the hearts of others long after you have left the room. I once knew a woman named Eleanor, a retired librarian who had a way of making people feel at home no matter where they were. She never sought attention, never tried to be the loudest voice in the room, yet people were drawn to her in a way that was almost magnetic. It wasn't her looks, though she had a warmth that made her seem ageless. It was something deeper. The way she listened, how she made you feel like the most important person in the world when you spoke to her. One evening we were at a small gathering when a young woman sat beside Eleanor, clearly overwhelmed. She had just moved to the city and was struggling to find her place. Without hesitation, Eleanor smiled, reached for the woman's hand, and said, "Tell me everything." And just like that, the girl began to speak, her worries spilling out like water breaking through a dam. Eleanor didn't offer solutions or rushed reassurances. She just listened, nodding, offering the occasional knowing smile, as if to say, "I understand, you are not alone." By the end of the night, the young woman had a lightness about her, as if a weight had been lifted. I don't know why I told you all that, she admitted with a laugh. I barely know you. Eleanor simply shrugged and said, maybe you needed someone to hear you. That was Eleanor's power. She never demanded attention, yet people felt safe with her. They sought her presence not because she dazzled them with charm or wit, but because she had a way of making people feel seen, valued, and understood. And isn't that the rarest kind of beauty? The kind that draws people in not with appearances but with presence? The kind that makes someone feel at ease, feel worthy, feel whole? Have you ever noticed that people open up to you easily, that strangers confide in you, that your presence makes others feel comfortable? If so, you may have a beauty far greater than you realize. Tell me, have you ever experienced this quiet power? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. 7. You catch people stealing glances at you. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "The eyes of men converse as much as their tongues, with the advantage that the ocular dialect needs no dictionary." There is an unspoken language in the way people look at you, a quiet acknowledgement that presence, true presence, is impossible to ignore. I remember my friend Grace, a woman who carried herself with a kind of dignity that made people pause. At 72, she had stopped worrying about looking younger, stopped chasing trends or trying to fit into someone else's idea of beauty. Yet wherever we went, I would catch people stealing glances at her, not out of curiosity, but admiration. One afternoon we were having lunch at a small cafe when I noticed a younger man at the next table watching her. He wasn't being intrusive, just observing. When Grace got up to leave, he stood quickly, holding the door open as if it were an instinct. As we walked out, I teased her, "Did you see the way he was looking at you?" She laughed, shaking her head. I stopped looking for that kind of attention a long time ago. But I had seen it, and it wasn't just from men. Women noticed her too, complimented her posture, the way she carried herself, the way her silver hair framed her face. The attention she received had nothing to do with trying to look young. It had everything to do with the quiet confidence she radiated, the unspoken grace in the way she moved through the world. And yet, for years, Grace had believed she had become invisible. "I used to think that once I passed a certain age, no one would look at me the same way," she admitted one day. "But maybe I wasn't paying attention to the way people really see me. That's the thing, sometimes, we don't realize how visible we truly are. A lingering glance, a warm smile from a stranger, an extra moment of attentiveness, these are signs. Signs that presence, charisma, and energy don't fade with time, they deepen. Have you ever noticed someone stealing a glance at you, a fleeting look that lasted a second too long? If so, take it as a reminder, you are not invisible. Your presence is still felt, still noticed, still admired. Tell me, have you ever caught someone looking at you in a way that made you wonder? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you see yourself now. As the years pass, the definition of beauty changes, but it never disappears. It deepens, refines, and takes on a presence that no youthful glow can replace. If people are drawn to your warmth, if they listen when you speak, if they admire the way you carry yourself, that is beauty in its truest form. So perhaps the question isn't, am I still beautiful, but rather, have I been seeing myself the way others do? Because if you've ever caught a lingering glance, received an unexpected compliment, or felt the quiet respect of those around you, the answer is already there. Which of these signs resonated with you the most? Have you ever had a moment when you realized your beauty wasn't about looking young, but about the way you move through the world? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments below. And if this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need this reminder today. Because beauty isn't just something we see, it's something we recognize, celebrate, and pass on.